In this chapter, we'll take a look at theories of human growth and development. So first of all, we need to understand what a theory is. And so as delineated right here, a theory, it's a group of ideas, it's assumptions and generalizations that are taken from thousands of observations that have been made about human growth. So basically, in a nutshell, that just means taking all the available knowledge from a bunch of observations and research and putting it all together and coming up with a theory. Now, on this slide right here, what's important to remember is the term norm. So facts and norms is what we're looking at on this slide here. But first of all, we'll take a look at norm. And that's basically an average or standard measurement calculated from the measurements of many individuals within a specific group or population. So to make that simpler, a norm is just what a population just normally does. Hence the word norm. And theories, just keep in mind, that remember theories. That is an assumption or an observation derived from looking at a lot of information, a lot of facts, a lot of studies, et cetera, and then coming up with a theory. But remember, theories are not facts. They allow us to question norms, suggest hypotheses, and provide guidance. So first of all, we'll be taking a look at what's known as the grand theories. And it's important to understand that we use the term grand theory because those are the main big theories that have stood the test of time, that have really made the most impact on the study of human development. And so the first theory that we'll take a look at is what's called psychoanalytic theory. And that was developed by Sigmund Freud in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And he basically looked at what he called irrational, unconscious drives and motives that usually originate in childhood and that underlie our human behavior. So basically what that means is just he proposed that a lot of our basic drives and motives, those are actually come from unconscious drives from childhood, things that we experienced in childhood. Now he proposed all these right here, the 5 psychosexual stages, et cetera, the id, ego, superego, parts of personality. Do not worry about memorizing those. I just wanted to have those on here just so to give you a brief overview of this. Taking a little bit further, psychoanalytic theory, later on in the 20th century, this gentleman here named Erikson, he developed 8 developmental stages in human development. And basically, those 8 stages are still used in developmental research and developmental theory, et cetera. So basically, he still based his 5 psychosocial stages built on Freud's theory, but he added some adult stages, hence the 8 stages. But what's important is he differed from Freud. He said that most of our motives and desires are from our family and culture, not our sexual urges. So that's important to understand the difference there. Now, another grand theory is what's called behaviorism. And that basically, in a nutshell, that just says that, that our learning takes place through what we, our interactions with our environment. We are conditioned, and so it's not really talking about the growth of our psychoanalytic growth or our social growth, et cetera, et cetera. It's more concerned with just our behavior. We just learn through interaction with our environment and stimuli. And that is more concerned, behaviorism is more concerned with, as this puts right here, observable behavior. And so it's not concerned with what's going on in one's minds in our psychology. It's more on physical behavior that can be observed. Now, Ivan Pavlov is a pretty popular behaviorist. He was the researcher that did the salivating dog experiments, where he basically learned that through conditioning that dogs could salivate not only just to food, but to certain sounds like the sound of a bell or the sound of a metronome, et cetera, et cetera. So he was a well-known behaviorist. And so that, he called that classical conditioning. That was known as classical conditioning. That's when a behavior can be learned by making an association between an environmental stimulus and a naturally occurring stimulus. So like I said before, I gave the example of the salivating dogs with the sound of a bell. Well, it's a naturally occurring stimulus, was the dog food. Whereas, eventually Pavlov would ring a bell right before the dogs would be fed, and eventually they would make an association between the sound of the bell and they would begin salivating, getting ready to eat. And eventually Pavlov was able to not even present the food and just ring the bell, and the dogs would salivate. Now, on this slide right here, what's important to know is the term operant conditioning. So all that means is basically reinforcement or punishment will increase or decrease one's behavior. So I'll just give you a very simple example of that. Operant conditioning can be as a student learns that a certain study technique usually results in higher grades or GPA. That is a reinforcement. And so they will keep using that. And so that is what's known as operant conditioning. Now, another grand theory was called social learning theory. And it's just very simple. That basically it proposes that individuals learn through our social interactions with other humans. Very simple. So underneath here, I did put two terms to be aware of: observational learning. And observational learning is just simply that. It just means learning through observing others' behavior. And modeling means basically copying others' behavior. You say, an individual may say, well, I think that the way that person behaves or acts, can lead to success or achievement of my goals. So I will model my behavior after that person's behavior. Another grand theory is what's called cognitive theory. Now, the term cognitive, that just reflects basically psychological processes, types of thinking, hence the term cognitive. Cognitive means mind or brain, processes of the human brain, etc., thinking processes. Now, John Piaget, those of you who are going to go into this field or, behavior or counseling or etc., you may even hear this researcher's name occasionally. So he's an important developmental theorist to know about. And these are Piaget's periods of cognitive development. And this does not need to be memorized. but I just wanted to make you aware that there are these periods of development right here. And these are the types of cognitive development that Piaget proposed that actually occurs within human beings. And these are well-known, definitely theories of Piaget's. Now, another grand theory is what's known as information processing theory, and that is just simply comparing the human brain to computers. So basic human thinking processes are similar to computer processes, like analysis of data, including sensory input, connections, stored memories, output, etc. But just keep it simple and just say that information processes is, basically analogizing the human brain with computers. Now, newer theories, what's important to understand is newer theories, they eventually started to combine a lot of the other theories, the older theories, and come up with a more insightful, more all-inclusive type theory. And one of those was sociocultural theory. And that means that basic human development results from basically interaction between people and society. So basic human interactions and interaction with one's environment, and that's how actual human development results. Now, what's important here, is also culture is an important part to a person's development. And these were proposed by this researcher right here. I'm just going to say the last name, Vygotsky. And Vygotsky basically proposed that basically all learning, occurs through social interaction. Now, I did include this here in our presentation just because of a simple term right here. And this is called zone of proximal development. And all that basically refers to is that those are the knowledge, skills, and concepts the learner is close to acquiring, but cannot acquire those on their own and will need some mentoring to help them get to that next level. And, a lot of instructors, a lot of teachers and everything, that's what they do. They say, okay, well, my students are capable of learning this, but they're going to need a little bit of coaching, a little bit of mentorship, and getting them to that next level. So that is called the zone of proximal development. Now, a couple things we'll take a look at here is, I just want to remind you that in the sociocultural perspective, taking culture into account is extremely important. So it's viewed as something external, and and it's very important to human development. I am going to leave it at that. We'll keep it simple. And another perspective that's important to look at is what's called evolutionary theory. And that basically just says that there are many issues in human development, and we basically have two long-standing biologically based drives. That is our survival and our reproduction. So that's those drives are the result of evolution. And so that concludes our discussion. These are what I feel are some of the most important factors to get from this chapter. And so the next step is please get out your Chapter 2 study guides and begin answering the questions based on what you learned from this video. And feel free to review this video. And then, of course, if there are any questions that were not covered in this video but are in the study guide, that is where you will look those up in your textbooks. So good luck, and I'll see you in the next chapter.